There was a moment, that was from the Correspondents' Dinner Saturday night. President Joe Biden calling out the television network for the last 2 years has railed against vaccine mandates. At the White House Correspondents' Dinner, attendees laughed. You heard the room really break up. It raises this very serious issue of a double life, the hypocrisy of being a Fox News employee or anchor or correspondent, believing and doing one thing, the truth, and then telling their viewers to do the opposite. Fox has become a fervent purveyor of disinformation, has amplified in the post-Trump era, from COVID vaccine mandates to critical race theory to the results of the 2020 presidential election. Fox viewers are fed lies that can sometimes result in harmful consequences to them as well as to our democracy. In Nick's incredible body of reporting of Tucker Carlson in the New York Times, there was this interesting statistic, quote, much of Carlson's vast cable audience has grown to encompass the white nationalist fringe. It now drew in some of the hundreds who will go on to attack the Capitol. At least 8 people now facing criminal charges stemming from the insurrection commented on Carlson's official Facebook page in the preceding months, according to an analysis of since deleted Facebook accounts conducted by the Times by Counteraction, a security firm. Joining our conversation, former Republican strategist Steve Schmidt. Nick is still here. Steve, I thought of you when I saw this reporting starting to get pushed out by Nick in the Times over the weekend. And I know it's something that we've felt as we watch sort of Fox News go from being, more sympathetic in sort of the 2004, 2008 presidential elections in which we worked to becoming purveyors of disinformation. What do you think of the reporting?
I think the reporting is extremely important, and it pairs with another extremely important story, which is in Vanity Fair, that talks about J.D. Vance and talks about this new right movement. When I read this story, I think what stands out to me is what is obvious is not always known. And secondly, perspective matters. You can use the Google Earth map to look at your backyard from 20 feet up and see your barbecue in a very fuzzy picture. Or you can look at your backyard from 200 miles out in outer space. The view is the same. The perspective is different. And so what all of this is a coherent, organized ideology. And that ideology has a name. It's called fascism. The argument that Tucker Carlson is making and that J.D. Vance and others is making is this: that American freedom, that American culture, and that in order for it to be saved, we have to deal with the problem of American democracy. And the great flaw in American democracy, according to them, is that it treats everyone equally. And because it treats everyone equally, his vote, their vote, a group of people that look alike to them, white people who have a similar worldview, their vote, their power in their view is lessened. And so therefore, democracy becomes the opposite of freedom, because freedom cannot be something where they and people who are less than them are treated equally. This philosophy got 100 million people killed, at least, in the middle of the 20th century. And so everybody would have understood what this was who was alive in those moments. And when you see this in totality, the embrace of replacement theory, which is steeped in racial scientific theory, which goes back to the middle of the 19th century when a French nobleman named de Gobineau introduced a ranking of whose race was the smartest and introduced into the lexicon a word that previously hadn't existed, and that word was Aryan. And over the next 70 years, the use of that word would be picked up by an obscure political party in Germany that was a far-right party that called itself National Socialist. These people call themselves National Conservatives. It is teeming with extremism. It is dangerous. This is a fear-based ideology. that is meant to make people hate each other, and therefore it is un-American. It is contrary to the American idea and ideal as we understand it, which is at long last we stand at the edge of a moment when all people of all races and all religion and all ethnicity stand equally in this land before the law. That is what they are attacking, and that is what they hate.
Steve, why is it so popular?
It's popular because fear works, because we live in a time of profound change. We know, for example, that a dozen years into staring at a screen, that it's driven a lot of unhappiness in the society. We know that the CEO of Facebook envisions a future where there'll be a mask on people's heads and we live in a cartoon world. We know that 1 million people were wiped out by opioids by the Sackler family, and it was discovered as if Columbus discovered America for most of the people that live on both coasts. The fundamental dividing line in American politics is the line that separates Americans with a college degree from Americans who have a high school diploma. And the elites in the country, a lot of them, speak to and talk to people with a lot of contempt. And so this message is resonant. Lastly, there's something in the national character. And what's present in the national character is this allergy around being told what to do. So when you combine the contempt, when you combine the fact that people feel unseen and unheard, they are ripe for a message around what they are angry about. They are susceptible to the lie because the lie is able to take root when people lose faith, when they lose belief that tomorrow can be better. So in the absence of better, in the absence of an ability to see something that unites, people break into groups. They look at the world through individual eyes, through the eyes of takers, and what they say is that it's my group or their group. And what's happened in American politics is we have most Americans voting to protect themselves from politicians that they fear, or we have groups and politicians running to punish half the country that they don't agree with, to punish the people that dissent from how they see the world. And this, all of it together, fed by a media that drives a lot of conflict, that covers politics like it's a cage match, like it's an MMA fight. All of it has taken us to this moment. And so the choice is ahead. Where does the country go? And what the country's going to have to decide is if it wants to live in a world where fear and division is able to take groups. I'll just tell you what happens at the end of all of this. After you dehumanize everybody, Ann Applebaum wrote about this in the third essential story of the month. That's when the killing starts, and you can watch that play out in Ukraine.
To Steve's point, even within Fox News, no one suggests that what he does is even truth adjacent. This is from your story, part one. Accuracy isn't the point on Tucker Carlson tonight. On the air, Carlson piles up narrative confirming falsehoods and misleading statements so rapidly about George Floyd's death, white supremacists who took part in the January 6th riot, falling testosterone levels in men, COVID vaccines, the Texas power grid, and more, that the Washington Post media critic Eric Wemple has made a sideline of cataloging them. Though Carlson claims his show to be the sworn enemy of lying, Fox's lawyers acknowledged in 2020 in a lawsuit accusing the host of slander that, quote, spirited debate on talk show programs does not lend itself well to statements of actual fact. The other way of saying Tucker Carlson lies his booty off or his tanned testicles, whichever.
You could fact check that show all day and not do anything else. And this is the defense that Fox's own lawyers offered in a slander lawsuit against him. More importantly than that, employees of Fox, executives of Fox, have warned Fox for years since that show went on the air that he was borrowing content from odious and racist sources on the far right, from the cesspool of the internet. And they let him keep doing it.
Wow.
Time and time again, because it makes them a lot of money. That show has brought in more ad revenue on an annual basis than any other show at Fox since 2018, despite the ad boycotts. And the reason is the audience is really big. And when the audience is that big, someone's going to want a piece of it for their herbal supplements or their pillows.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You've changed the conversation with this reporting. Thank you so much, Nick Confessori, for being here to talk about it. Steve Schmidt, thank you, my friend, for coming back and spending some time with us. When we come back, the January